We've come a long way since the inception of typing devices. The first ideas of typing devices dates as far back as the 1700s. Since then, technology has come a long way since the mechanical typewriter. So much so, we use computers and phones with keyboards embedded into our screen. Today, I will inform you about a very niche culture that surrounds mechanical keyboards, a hobby that surrounds the construction of mechanical keyboards to replicate historical keyboards from the 70s and 90s. Today, we don't really consider the use of keyboards a big deal, and understandably so. We use keyboards for our laptops, phones, and personal computers. The mechanical keyboard hobby and culture surrounds the making of personalized mechanical keyboards to replicate historical keyboards. Depending on your personal tastes and budget, mechanical keyboards have endless possibilities. Some keyboards can start at $100 and can go up to the prices of $1,000. For example, my personal everyday keyboard that I use cost me $450. I first got into mechanical keyboards when I was 18. I remember buying all the pieces and components to build my personal computer. I also remember buying a generic gaming keyboard that eventually broke down over time. I searched for replacements and stumbled upon a very niche community of mechanical keyboard building. Since then, I have built 5 keyboards and have plenty of experience surrounding mechanical keyboards. I will first explain what are the basic components that make up a mechanical keyboard. Secondly, I will explain the differences among components and how that can affect your typing experience. Lastly, I will go through a step-by-step process on how to build a very personal basic keyboard. Let's begin by looking at the components that make up a mechanical keyboard. While there are many mechanical keyboards out in the world, many share the same foundation of components, so you can expect most keyboards to be similar in construction. According to ZDNet.com, there are 5 main components to a mechanical keyboard: a case, PCB, plate, switches, and keycaps. Each component, depending on what you choose, can alter the sound and feel of your keyboard. For the first component, we'll be talking about the case. The case is essentially what everything goes into. All of the other components fit into the case. Second, the case is often decided by the user for aesthetic reasons, like the color or the material. For example, there's aluminum, wood, polycarbonate, and plastic. Oftentimes, the case is sold with specific components to make sure that all the other components fit into the case. Next is the PCB, the electronic portion of your keyboard. The PCB is used to hold the switches and send a signal to your computer when you type. The PCB is essentially like the brain of your mechanical keyboard. Next is the plate. The plate is used to secure the switches and PCB together. Oftentimes, the plate just sits above the PCB while holding the switches and can come in materials like brass, aluminum, and polycarbonate. Next are the switches. The switches are a crucial part of your keyboards in terms of personal preference. There are tons of switches to choose from, and they all have a distinct sound and feel. You can also lube switches with certain lubricants that can alter the sound and feel as well. Lastly, the keycaps. Like some of the other components, there are so many keycaps on the market. The keycaps are the keys you type on and are usually chosen to match your keyboard, giving it a certain look a user wants. There are multiple styles and shapes to choose from as well. It all boils down to how the user would like their typing experience to look and feel like. Next, I'll talk about variations of components and how this can affect your mechanical keyboard experience. According to geekhack.org, a popular forum for all things keyboards, users have displayed countless examples of how different materials can alter the sound and feels of your user's keyboard. Using different materials within your keyboard is a fun way of understanding how they can affect your typing experience. In essence, there are hundreds of ways to mix and match certain components to best fit your personal preferences. Starting with the case. There are hundreds of cases on the market today. Choosing one can be tricky. Cases can come in plastic, aluminum, and sometimes even stone. There are niche creators that make cases in very unique designs to keep things fresh on the market. Next is the plate. Like the case, the plate can come in any material like plastic or brass. When choosing a plate, you want to consider how hard you type. For example, a plastic plate can have a lot more of a buoyant, cushy feel as opposed to brass, which feels very solid and stiff. According to geekhack.org, aluminum is the safest choice when starting out your building process. It's the cheapest, sounds great, and it feels good. Next are the switches. Switches are an incredibly crucial part of understanding how you want your keyboard to feel and sound like. There's so much variety in switches, ranging from the acoustics, the feel, and the actuation of the switch. Switches can come in certain types of plastics, which, believe it or not, can alter the sound and feel. There are also 3 styles of switches: linear, tactile, and clicky. Linear is a simple, straight down, forward approach to typing with no feedback. Tactile switches have a small bump on the way down when you type that gives minimal feedback. Clicky switches have the most feedback when typing and also make a clicky sound. If you want to get crazy, users can mix the casings, springs, and stems of multiple switches that can create a switch of its own. These are often called zombie switches or Franken switches. Lastly are the keycaps. Keycaps are just another component that has multiple options. There are multiple different plastics that make up keycaps that can again alter the sound and feel of your keyboard. Usually, keycaps are chosen for aesthetic reasons and usually wrap up your mechanical building process. Lastly, I will go through a step-by-step process on how to build a mechanical keyboard. Building a keyboard can seem daunting, but in reality, they're quite simple. It can almost replicate the feeling of building Legos. Each piece has their intended place and everything will click into place. First, gather your components. This includes your case, PCB, plate, switches, and keycaps. Second, start by clicking your switches into place and into your plate and PCB. Third, place your PCB with the plate and switches into the case, screw it into place your keycaps on top, and you're finished. That is a simple step-by-step process for building keyboards. In sum, I went over the basic components that make up a mechanical keyboard. Then I explained the differences between those components and how they can affect your keyboard process. And lastly, I demonstrated a step-by-step process on how to build a mechanical keyboard. Mechanical keyboards have been around for hundreds of years. There is a culture that appreciates the creation and making of mechanical keyboards. The mechanical keyboard process is one that allows for creativity, style, and personal preferences, and that's fun for everyone. You don't have to break the bank, and you can go budget friendly, or vice versa. Either way, you'll have a personalized tool you can use every day that looks good on your desk and that's made for you by you. Thank you.